Here's the progress on my therapy blanket that I'm making for my therapy for my frozen shoulder, or no, for my fractured shoulder. And I was going along really well with it, and I'm just making it in long strips, and it's a very wide blanket. But then I threw it down on this chair, and it did this. And I thought, I like that better than this. Bring back the ripple. I haven't done ripple in years. In fact, I think my very first crochet piece was a small ripple pillow. So I'm going to restart this. I'm going to start all over, and I'm going to do it in ripple. I think it'll look so pretty. What do you think? Hello everybody, and welcome back to Erndales. My name is Dale. I am so happy to see you all. It's been a little bit of a time, has it not? A couple of weeks anyway. I am on the mend. I have my cast, or they don't cast a shoulder like what I had. I had a big heavy brace thing on that was on there for 4 weeks, but I got that taken off on Thursday. And I am starting to kind of use my arm and my hand, not so much my shoulder. I'm getting a little bit, I'm getting better at trying to use it, but I'm still a little bit of afraid to use it. But I start physio tomorrow, and I'm hoping that's going to really speed things up. But I have been doing a few things, of course. I'm me. I don't, well, the doctor, I look at it this way. I was a nurse, and so I know probably more than I should. But the other thing is, the doctors didn't tell me what I couldn't do, and they didn't tell me what I could do. So I think, well, they told me what I should do, which is rotate my arm like this. This is my good arm, by the way. And I did that, but they didn't say that I couldn't do anything else. So I did some of that. Anyway, that little clip that you just saw, I recorded the second week after I had broke my shoulder. And I don't know that I was supposed to be crocheting at that time, but I only did a little bit. Like, by a little bit, I mean 10 stitches. That's it. And then I would stop. And then, 15 minutes later, I'd do 10 more stitches and I would stop. And that's how I was going at that time. Just a little tiny bit, because I had to do something. I was sick and tired of sleeping. I was sick and tired of watching TV, which I am not a TV watcher, really. If I watch TV, it's usually a movie with Gary on Saturday night, or it's YouTube, which I don't watch on TV. Well, actually, I do now, but I didn't before. I always watched it on my phone or on my iPad. So, yeah, sitting and just staring at a screen for days was not my thing. And I had read through everything that was of any interest to me. So I had decided to crochet. And to be honest with you, in the last, I'd say 15 years, I have crocheted very little. I used to only crochet. Crochet was my thing. And I had a lot of that synthetic acrylic yarn left, a lot. And most of it is in small balls, like this size and this size. And I have, those things that you buy comforters in, those big plastic zippy bag things that they come in. I had one of those filled with these kind of things, completely filled to the top. It was a king size or queen size comforter bag, and it was stuffed full of yarn like this. And I've been kicking it around, moving it around so many times, and a lot of it is from 25 years ago. And actually, a couple of pieces of it is still from my mom. And my mom's been gone 40 years this year. So you can understand how old some of this acrylic yarn, and why I haven't thrown it out or gotten rid of it. Not thrown it out, but donated it or whatever. I don't know. So I decided 2 weeks into my recuperation that I was going to start doing something with it. And I chose to do the ripple. Now, I don't see a lot of ripple when I go looking on Instagram or, you know, Pinterest, wherever you look. You don't see a lot of ripple. What you do see a lot of is the little squares, the granny squares, different varieties of granny squares, but they're still granny squares. And I love the look of that, but I hate sewing things together like squares. And I think that's one of the reasons why I haven't finished that knitting Afghan, the one that's all the different patterns, is because eventually I'm going to have to sew them all together. And I don't like doing that. But the ripple Afghans that you can make out of scraps, just like you make the granny squares out of scraps, you don't really have to sew together. So that's what drew me to start. Well, actually, I didn't start it as ripple, as you saw in that thing. I started it as in strips, but then I threw it down on a chair and it formed the little ripple that I showed you. And it made me think, why don't I just do a ripple? I love the look of a ripple, and especially a scrappy one. So I tore it all apart and I started it over, and I'll show you. Now, remember, I was only doing 10 or 12 stitches, maybe 20 at a time. And I just, since I've got my, I just wound everything around here. Since I've got my cast brace thing, whatever you call it, off, I've done a little bit more. Oh my gosh, I really wound this up here. Hold on, I'm in a tangled mess. Okay, so this is my, now what's, trying to figure out which is the front and which is the back. Okay, here we go. So as you can see, I'm changing colors. Just as I'm running out, I'm changing. And I'm loving how this looks. I'm totally loving how this looks. That's as far as I've got, and it's hard for me to hold this up because that's one of the things I can't do yet is raise my arm. But I'm really liking this. And I'm doing it a little different. Usually when you do a ripple, you do, when you're doing these stitches here, you do it in the back stitch. So you also get a line, another form of a ripple here. But I decided I didn't want that. So I'm just doing mine in the whole stitch. I'm not just doing it in one part of the stitch. So mine is flat. You know, when I was picking all this up and working with it, I was thinking about, it's funny, and I know you've all experienced this if you've been crocheting or knitting a long time and you have stash and you go to use that stash, you remember exactly what you used each thing for. And that's sort of the journey that this is taking me on, is some of my old projects. And I thought I would share some of those with you because they were quite nice, and I don't think I will do that kind of thing anymore, but I will show them to you. So before I show you what all the different Afghans and things that I made out of some of the colors that are in here, I just thought I would show you some different types of ripples Afghans. There's so many different, just like there is for granny squares, there's a lot of different types of ripples as well. And some of these are just absolutely gorgeous because of the material that they used to make them. Now this is the look, whoops, I just tore something out that I shouldn't have. This is the look that you're going to get if you do it in the back stitch instead of in the full stitch. You're going to get that extra little ripple. And it's gorgeous, is it not? You're getting a, let me turn this light a bit. Maybe that'll help. There we go. Ow, ow, it hurts to hold my arm up. So that is the effect that you get if you do your single crochet in the back stitch. You get an extra little ripple just from the stitch itself. Isn't that beautiful? I love ripple in one color. I just think it's gorgeous. So that's one. That's the normal way of doing the ripple stitch. Here's another. This is done in the same way, but with a different type of yarn. And you can see how beautiful that is. It's so textured. It's absolutely lovely. And then you can do something like this. This is not using a single crochet. This is using, they're double crochet, almost like shells, but it's still done in a ripple. It's gorgeous. Here's another one. This one is also done in a shell, but in between the shells, some of the rows, the purplish rows are shells, and then the other rows are, I believe, are they single crochet? No, they're double crochet. So there's many, many different ways you can do. You can use all kinds of different stitches and still have a ripple afghan. You don't have to do the single crochet like what I'm doing. But this is the traditional way of doing a ripple crochet blanket. The old-fashioned way of doing a ripple crochet blanket, except I'm not doing it in the back stitch. So some of the things that, now did I turn this around? Some of the things that I've made with some of these yarns. So like I said, this one is from my mom's, this pretty color here, this teal color. And then we get to this beigey taupey color. I made an afghan for my girlfriend out of that because she had made me an afghan years and years ago when we were just teenagers. She had made one for me in granny squares, and I will show that to you. But this is the one that I made for her in that color. And it's a beautiful, beautiful afghan. I made it several times. I did it in this beigey color like hers, and I also did it in a chocolate brown for another friend. And it's just gorgeous. For the second time I made it, I did not have the lace on the end. I just left that off. I just made it plain, and it was gorgeous. Even so that it was left plain, it has so much texture in it that it was just lovely. So that's one of the things I made. And then where do we go after that? We have beige until we go to this, well, the red I made Christmas stockings out of. This white here, I made an afghan for my niece, Cindy, when she got married. This is the one that I made for my niece, Cindy, for her wedding gift. And I made it in acrylic, and it was beautiful. So that was this off-white color here. And then this purple, I made a sweater out of purple and black for my mother-in-law, a cardigan. I couldn't find the pattern for it, or I would have showed it to you, the pattern. I don't have any pictures of it. This yellow here, I made a bear for my great-nephew when he was born. And I made it in the loop stitch, and I'll put a picture of it up here for you. It was so fun to make, and it was adorable, and it was all squishy. It was a really nice toy. So I made that out of this yellow for him. This blue, I made an afghan for a co-worker who was expecting a baby, and we knew it was a boy. And he now, I think he's close to 17, or maybe he's even 18. He's around that age. And the one that I made for him is, I made him the alphabet afghan. This is the one that I made for Jasper. And it was absolutely gorgeous. I would make this Afghan again and again and again and again. It was so fun to make. I loved making this one. And that's the lovely thing about this, is all done in one piece. You don't have to sew anything together. And I think that's what I like about crochet as opposed to some other things. There are things that you can make that are all in one piece. There is a knitting too, but crochet more so. So those are a few of the colors in here. This black was part of my mother-in-law's sweater as well. It was black and purple. So those are the colors so far and the projects so far, but I have many, many, many more colors and many, many more projects. The books that I've been showing you are these books here. They're old books. This one here is the Blue Ribbon Afghan book. It has gorgeous, gorgeous patterns in it. This one is the Great Big Crochet Afghan book. Fantastic book. Lots of wonderful patterns in there. Tons. If you're a crocheter, these are great books. Afghans for all seasons. And there's some really difficult ones in here. Like there's a lot of really detailed ones for advanced crocheters, but there's some in here also for first-time crocheters. And this project is a perfect first-time crocheter project. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you the pattern that I made for this. I'm just going to write it out be in the description below this video. So if you are a first-time crocheter and you know how to do a single crochet, it's all you need to know. You need to know how to get your work going and how to chain and how to do a single crochet, and then you can do a ripple Afghan. So I will put my pattern for this little crochet blanket. And it'll be quite long. I'll stand up. So it's quite long. But you can see how different the colors are as it goes. Because what I'm doing is I'm mixing up my little balls with the bigger ones. And I lost one. The small ones, if I'm working with the small ones, I'll pick, I'm not even picking the colors. I just reach in my big bag and I'll pull out 5 balls. And then I'll just crochet those 5 balls. And then I'll go to a bigger ball and I'll finish that bigger ball. And then I'll go back. And so it's nothing, I'm not thinking about it. It's just a random thing that I'm doing. And how it turns out is how it's going to turn out. But the other thing I wanted to show you was this this is an old book. I got this when I was learning to crochet. When I learned to knit when I was 7 or 8, but I wanted to crochet in the worst way, but my mom wasn't really a crocheter, but she tried to teach me and I couldn't get it. And my aunt, who actually crocheted by looking at something, she couldn't read a pattern, but she could do the most beautiful doilies, pineapple doilies, and all she had to do was look at a piece and she could redo it herself. She tried to teach me and I couldn't do it. So I bought this book. And this is an old book. And I'll show you how I can prove that. It is 1976. And I just have to share some of the projects in here because they are hilarious, really. This goes to show you what was going on in the 70s. And Ripple was very big in the 70s. I remember I had a purse that I carried that was bought in a store. It was a manufactured purse and it was in Ripple. So here's the kind of things we did back in the 70s. We made halter tops. Now, we have cotton yarn. We didn't have cotton yarn back then. I would make that out of the cotton that you would use to make dishcloths. How cool, meaning cool, would that be? Now, I've seen this kind of thing on Pinterest lately. That saying, everything old becomes new again, is really true. And this will prove it to you. Now, here's something I bet you never thought of crocheting. A bikini. Not for me personally, but, you know, if it worked for you. And then there's capes and shawls. Look at that cape. And vests. And another vest. Socks. Actually, they're more like slippers because they have a leather bottom on them. But I've seen things much like this on Pinterest. And jewelry. I have seen this kind of thing now too. So a lot of this stuff is coming back. Here's a crocheted bag. And actually in the 70s, we used to carry bags much like this. These were what we used in high school as purses. Every girl had, they weren't crocheted though. They were more of a woven, but they looked much like that. And there's a little crocheted purse. Cute. I might make that actually, that little purse. I like that. And I have some heavier yarn that I could use for something like that. And I would maybe mix it with jute to give it more stability. Belts and ties. I made some crochet belts. I wore them back in the 70s. They were the thing. Check out these hats. Why don't you? Watch, this stuff will all start appearing on Pinterest now. Rugs and table mats. Hammock. Again, with the kind of yarns you can buy now, you can buy a lot of cottons and nylons. You could make a really good sturdy hammock. And is that it? Of course, there we go. There's the Ripple blanket and the granny blanket. Very much in vogue in the 70s. 60s and 70s, I would say. A wall hanging, that's crocheted. I don't know if there's a better picture. No. Macrame hangers, I've seen those. Macrame is coming back too. That was another thing that I was really involved in, was macrame. A backpack. A tennis racket cover. This is the best one yet. I'm not quite sure if I would have an occasion to wear that, but yeah. So, there's no end to what you can do with crochet, but Ripple, I think we should bring back the Ripple as much as we brought back the granny square, because it is so pretty. No matter what you do with it, you can make a pillow, you can make a vest, you can make a purse, you can make an afghan. You can do a lot of things with Ripple, and it is simple, simple, easy, and so, so pretty when it's done. So that is my bring back the Ripple video. I'm going to, now that I can do a little bit more with my arm, I'm going to get on with this, and I'm going to clear out that big bag of acrylic. I don't know, like I don't seem to have that much yarn, wool yarn, as I have acrylic. Maybe because I haven't been knitting with wool as long as I have been knitting and crocheting with acrylic. I don't know. But anyway, that's my Afghan. It's going to be a warm one though. I'm using a number 5 millimeter hook, or J or 5 millimeter, whatever you prefer. And the other thing is, most of this is worsted weight, but there is some sport in here as well, and I don't care. I'm just mixing it all up. You know, I mean, if I use sport in the next row, I might use worsted, and it'll all fit in. I don't care about the colors. I don't care about the weight. I'm just using it all up. However it turns out, it turns out. It's going to be a blanket that's going to be on the family room sofa, and it's going to be used, I know, because both Gary and I love to cover up in our blankets in the wintertime when we watch TV or whatever we do. So if you're interested in trying to get rid of some acrylic yarn in a pretty way, I'll leave the instructions for what I'm doing here in the pattern below in the description, and you can try it out for yourself. So thank you for joining me. Take care, everybody, and have a beautiful day. Oh, and happy Mother's Day if you are in Canada or United States. It's Mother's Day here. Take care, everyone.